Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Let's move on to the ChatGPT search and ChatGPT traffic referrals in particular. So I think you posted on LinkedIn that I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, that you're seeing a 3x increase in referrals from ChatGPT in the last few months. Can you elaborate on that? Give us some more context on that.
Yeah, I think it was actually a 10x.
Okay.
If I remember, I'm going by memory here. I don't have the post called up, but yeah, we just went in and looked at a cross section of our clients. We have over 3,500 enterprise level clients, and looked across a big cross section of them, diverse cross section, where we have access to their referrals, their referral data, traffic data. And we saw from August to a couple weeks ago that there was this, 10, I think it was a 10 times rise, a significant rise. Now, the number is very small still.
Right, from a small base.
Right, small base, but it is growing. I think that's the story here. It indicates that it removes the doubt, more and more people are using it. And it also was interesting that it tracked with right around the increase tracked right around the time of the introduction of SearchGPT, which first was introduced by OpenAI as its own thing, a separate kind of search. Now it has been incorporated into ChatGPT, so you can do real-time web searches right from ChatGPT. But still, the fact that they put it out there that this increase started then, it's not a bad hypothesis that this was the influx of users turning to SearchGPT and using it. So continue to monitor that, but definitely it's rising. It's got our attention enough that we are turning significant resources at SEO Clarity to enabling the tracking of that for our clients. And as much as we can, these major, SearchGPT, Bing's Gen.AI search, perplexity, things like that, being able to show them how much, to what extent they show up as sources in those documents, the referral traffic they're getting, those kind of things.
As long as I'm assigning homework here, can I assign another little bit? So it would be interesting to me to know, with the rollout of SearchGPT into ChatGPT, was there a bump? In other words, once it became broadly available, and then the next bump that's coming is 18.2 iOS 18.2, when Apple integrates SearchGPT into the operating system of a limited subset of their phones. Do we see another bump? Those would be interesting.
We will be benchmarking both of those, because I said, the first bump we saw was when SearchGPT came out itself. Then, the integration is still pretty new, but we'll, in a week or two, we'll probably take a look at that, see if that's caused another bump. And then, like you say, ChatGPT is going to be integrated in some way starting in December into iOS. So that'll be another one to watch for sure.
And if you can track that desktop versus mobile, that would be interesting too.
Sure.
Yeah. So what about Perplexity? You guys are tracking that as well. And Perplexity apparently has not seen as much growth as ChatGPT. It's seeing incremental increases, but it's much more kind of gradual, it appears.
Yeah, OpenAI seems to, be able to keep coming in time after time and grabbing back the market share. Every time we think, they were because we're all used to that in the tech world, right? A lot of times the early adopter, the first one in, has this big splash, and then other people come on and innovate, and the first adopter gets. I mean, Google did that to all the other search engines, right? Google didn't invent organic search or search results. They just disrupted everybody else's and ate everybody else's lunch.
Add to that maps and local. They ate everybody's lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. So OpenAI has been amazing in this resilience of my expectation, frankly, was they made the big splash a year and a half ago when they introduced and got everybody interested in generative AI and using like that, and then all these other innovators came along, all these other competitors. But now they seem to be, then SearchGPTs, and then SearchGPT within 3 months being integrated right into ChatGPT, they seem to keep capturing back the attention. So, yeah, that's definitely where we're seeing the most activity now compared to something like Perplexity.
And what are your thoughts about? I mean, are you a ChatGPT search user?
Yeah,
I would assume. So, what David wrote a piece kind of early impressions. I wrote something somewhere else, and I think we broadly agree that it's pretty good. There are a lot of good things about it, and it has some legs here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it?
I mean, it's obviously, and a lot of people were doing this. The first things that I did on it when it came out was that, testing the real time capabilities. The example that I posted on LinkedIn was on the last campaign day before the election. I asked ChatGPT with search, where are the presidential candidates appearing today? And it gave me the itinerary right there in the answer. When I went to Google or Bing and put that same request in, all I got was news stories that I would have to click through and see if they had that information. So on that kind of like real-time information, being able to, the advantage here is that it can go now real time, of course, into the search results. Most people are speculating mostly from Bing, but they say other sources as well. But not just show those results, not just regurgitate them to you, but go into them and analyze them and summarize them in useful ways. So that kind of thing is super useful. I think just for, again, answering basic questions, how to do something like that, I found it useful. Summarizing topics I'm interested in, all those kind of things. Two broad areas where it's definitely not. It's kind of back in the SGE era on both local results and shopping results. It just doesn't have those capabilities yet to match anything like what Google does for those areas.
It could get much better, at least in local, very quickly if it did some sort of data deal with Apple,
Right.
or but
I was going to jump in there.
I've been playing a lot with the new. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in quickly and say I agree with you, Mark, 100% that as Greg just said, sort of the data quality layer of local leaves significant room for upside, I would say, in SearchGPT. But you made a comment earlier in the podcast today about how an AI overview in Google for a local search result isn't really adding any value beyond what you could get in a local pack result or a local finder result in traditional organic. And I think that the interface, the product interface of SearchGPT actually is a major differentiator relative to everything Google is doing, in that it allows you to refine queries holding the original context in a very conversational way. So instead of all of the cognitive load that I'm presented as a user, even with Google's AI AI organized search results, right? As Mike was just saying, okay, I type in a search for cocktail bars and I get 18 different kinds of cocktail bars that I have to scroll through and just kind of like get a sense. So I can, in ChatGPT, I can say, okay, what are the best cocktail bars in Manhattan? It gives me a list, and I can say, okay, now what about rooftop bars? Now what about rooftop bars with a happy hour? What about rooftop bars that also have food? And it's very, very good at those in terms of the interface, in terms of that ability to refine those queries. And I think the data quality is actually a much more solvable problem, as Greg just said, with a licensing deal. And that, to me, is not something that I've seen Google do a good job of at all. And frankly, I think, as we've talked about on previous episodes of the Near Memo, that sort of thinking is just totally antithetical to Google's entire DNA, where you have separate product teams working on each of these modules. And it's just not something that Google is really aligned well as an institution to address.
I think that. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
No, you, Mark. You're the guest.
I think that Google. This is my opinion. I think that Google is locked into catch-up mode in the AI field right now, the AI search field right now, because this is my tinfoil hat speculation. I really, really think the way that they handled SGE and then AIO's introduction was a response to shareholders.
Of course it was.
They're yelling like, "Where's our AI?" ChatGPT came out. Where's our generative AI? And Google said, "Oh God, okay, we got to do something." So we'll have the minimal impact. Here it is. See, yeah, we've got it. It's great. People love it. But now they're discovering that, oh no, people actually do want to use it, and they want to use it in useful ways that ChatGPT and Perplexity and others are giving them. And so I think a lot of the things that we're seeing now, that we're starting to see some innovation again in the AI area, AI search area in Google, after the fact, is catch up. They're trying to catch up like, oh no, we better have something that's,
Interestingly, to David's point about the query refinement, the sort of conversational query refinement, Google demoed conversational refinements or conversation, but it's using in a mobile context, but it's the same SERP, right? It's like it's just you ask another question, it gives you another
Get a
SERP.
new
You ask
SERP.
another question.
Yeah.
It's so it has context, it remembers context, but it still gives you this kind of clunky, weird SERP. And just the metaphor I was going to use to speak to the cognitive load point is that, I live in a house that was built in 1927 and was originally like a one-room cabin that's been enlarged a whole bunch of times, and it's got all kinds of funky things going on as a result of that. That's the metaphor in my mind for Google's SERP, is that I think last week David suggested they should just start over with Gemini, if they really want to build a great AI experience. But they've got these modules and they've got their ads and they've got all these sort of legacy pieces, and they're trying to shoehorn everything in. And to look at these pages is kind of exhausting. It's like, I don't want to have to spend 15, 20 minutes just to get a piece of information that I need. That's how I often feel looking at a Google SERP.
Yeah,
I would add to just a little bit here that, again, I've been playing a lot with 18.1 applied Apple Intelligence. And what I am seeing is that in the domains where Apple has knowledge graphs, news and events, sports, music, TV, and movies, where they have both a knowledge graph and a real-time knowledge graph. In other words, you can, during the middle of a game, ask for an update on the sports score and get it. Right. So Apple is in a position with the rollout of 18.2 to start skimming a whole range of these types of searches off the top. I mean, it's as if Siri is getting ready to Sherlock search in my mind. And given the broad distribution and the incredible high quality of those graphs, a whole bunch of queries could be taken away from Google. Again, it's going to take 2 years because it takes an iPhone 15 Pro or above, and you got to get through the hardware cycle. But another thing to keep an eye on is that this interface that's in half the people's United States hands is going to be taking a lot of these real-time searches away from both ChatGPT and Google.
I think that's really a great insight, Mike, and something that we definitely want to be keeping an eye on, because I just can't imagine that's not going to have some kind of impact in that direction. It'd be stupid for them not to. I want to go back for a moment, though, just to the real-time interaction, the conversational search that Greg and David were talking about a moment ago. Because one thing that I didn't see a lot of people talk about, but I noticed it, and I thought this was kind of weird and significant, was back in the SGE days, and I think in the early days of AIO, they used to have a conversational function within the AIO.
Right.
At the bottom, you could ask a question, and it even had like 3 or 4 suggested questions. That's gone. They took that out months ago. So they backtracked from that conversational aspect. And, I haven't seen it come back yet. And I'm just curious, like, why wouldn't they do that? It's really
do you think it's to keep
theory.
the AI on the rails, or do you think it's to...
No, because my conspiracy theory is that was eating too many follow-up queries that Google wanted to count as unique queries, right? We've heard from all of these DOJ docs and everything, and Ed Zitron's reported on this as well, that Prabhakar Raghavan was made query volume, month over month query volume, as the single KPI that the entire Google product team was oriented around. And so if you had all of these sort of follow-up queries happening in the AI overview, you lose all of the subsequent searches where you have an opportunity to show a new and different set of ads. So that's my guess. And I think that this is kind of the perfect illustration of Google's innovator's dilemma. As I said, I think what they really ought to do if they want to sort of succeed in the AI world is to just whole cloth replace certain SERPs with a Gemini result. But I don't think they can do that from a financial standpoint. The revenue hit, the potential revenue hit is just too great. It's too big of a risk. So,
but they find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place because their competitors in the search AI search world, are doing that and are training people to be used to. It's another one of the things like I like about the SearchGPT experience. Is I know I can keep conversing with it. That illustration that you gave earlier, David, where I can keep asking it more questions and it's going to understand. It's going to help me narrow in a way that Google never really could quite do into that. And then people look at an AIO and they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
It seems like why am I using this?
If you're using the voice assistant on the mobile version of ChatGPT, right? That's a completely different experience. That was the sort of aspirational experience originally of Siri and Google Assistant and Alexa. But the idea that you can have an ongoing conversation and you can interrupt it and you can redirect the conversation, it's just a completely different, and for certain use cases, better experience.
I want to share
Yeah,
just
go
a
ahead.
quick anecdote about that. It was an amazing experience for me. Back a couple months ago, a friend of mine I'm a science fiction nut. He's another science fiction nut. I was driving an hour to go meet up with him. He had given me this book to read. I loved the book, but I didn't understand 70% of it. It just went like, whew. And so I in the car, I initiated this chat with ChatGPT, got, the initial like plot summaries and character summaries like that. And then I had a whole hour-long conversation,
Yeah.
digging deep into the themes of this book, into the origins of that. Like, so by the time I got to his house, I was so prepared to have it. But it was like I had a nerdy friend along with me in the car that I actually it was the closest I've ever felt to actually having a conversation with an AI.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.